Now that I've been going through mentorships with a lot of students for the past weeks and months, I've learned a lot of reoccurring themes about what people struggle with a lot of times when they're getting into bird photography or just trying to get better from where they're at. Today, I've compiled a list of 5 of maybe the most helpful things that I've recommended to a lot of my wildlife photography students and things that'll hopefully help you guys out in improving your bird photography. So the first and probably most helpful tip I recommend to the most amount of students that I have in my wildlife photography mentorship is definitely cheating depth of field with foreground. Now, when you have a really expensive lens, a lot of times you're able to get nice, blurry, crisp images in which you're able to kind of make the bird or make the subject stand out quite a lot. But when you have maybe cheaper equipment, or maybe you just aren't in a scenario where you're getting a lot of depth of field, there's one really good way to do that, and that's by using foreground. You cheat the foreground to increase your look and depth of field. Now, what I mean by that is, if you have, let's say, for example, in this cattle egret image that I took in the past, in the right side of the frame, you can see there's a bush there. Now, if you were to remove that bush, the whole image would look really flat. The cattle egret would be blended in really well amongst the detail around it in the leaves, and all of that detail meshed together would make for a very average or boring shot, in my opinion. However, because I was able to use that bush in the foreground to cheat the depth of field on the right side of the frame, it really helps give a much more mysterious and a much more hidden feel to the cattle egret in that image. So when you're able to use foreground elements like this in this image, you're able to give a more enhanced depth of field to your image that gives it a more professional look and a more high-end quality look to your image. By far, this is my most recommended tip to a lot of people, and I work with a lot of people on planning out how to use foreground to increase their depth of field in their shots. This is even more helpful in scenarios when you're on the ground, laying prone on the ground, trying to get eye level with a bird that's maybe feeding, foraging on the ground. But in so many scenarios, you can use this to your advantage. Now, tip number 2, probably the second most helpful tip that I've ever used with my students, is being patient and constantly revisiting the species. Now, a few weeks back with Trond, I talked a lot about this, about how a lot of times as wildlife photographers, when we're first getting into it, or as bird photographers, we just want to see as much as we can, as many times as we can, right? But as I've progressed in my journey, I've really come to find the importance and the value of not only just seeing a lot of different types of species, but seeing the same species over and over, and how good of shots that gets me. A great example of this is, if you've seen my lesser nighthawk vlogs that I've done over the past few weeks, I've been out to visit that bird at least 6 to 7 times within the past month and a half. And because of that reason, I've been able to get phenomenal shots that are really, really difficult to get of lesser nighthawks. But if I would have just gone out once, done it, and just been done with it, I would have never gotten a lot of those shots I was super proud of about this bird. So I'm constantly encouraging my students, revisit the same area, revisit species, learn their patterns, learn their behaviors in order to get amazing shots of them. When you know when they're gonna perch, you know what times they come out, it's gonna allow you to increase your productivity and your efficiency and how good of shots you get tenfold. It's a life-changing opportunity doing that. Now, tip number 3 that I give to my students very often is, while image subject is important, the whole image is important as well. And what I mean by that is, yes, the subject, the bird in these incidents, are very important to get properly exposed, properly composed, all of those things. And without that, you fail to get a good wildlife image, right? But the whole rest of the image makes up so much of the image as well. And so a great example of this is a barn owl image I took flying at sunrise. In this image, imagine if the barn owl was just set against maybe a blue sky, or just a plain monotone background colored sky. It would have made this image, yeah, still pretty cool, because the barn owl's in flight, it's a cool image, but it's not as good as what you see in this image because of those hills rolling in the background and the sunrise hitting those hills correctly. That really sells this image. It makes this image 2 times, 3 times as good as it would be if this barn owl was just flying against a normal sky background. Now, my 4th most helpful tip is gonna deserve so much more attention than I give to it in these 30, 60 seconds that I'm gonna talk about it, but this one is tacking focus. As you could see at the start of today, I was getting shots of violet green swallows, which are an incredibly difficult bird to tack focus with. And personally, I shoot manual focus, so that just enhances it that much more for flying subjects. But there is very important rules and tricks, in my opinion, to being able to tack focus. There's tools that you can use as well, like Sharpen AI. I've talked a little bit about that in a past video. I'll put the card above. But if you guys are interested in learning more about Sharpen AI specifically and how that works with focus, make sure to comment below. Let me know that you want to see more about it. Or if you guys want to learn a lot about how I learn tricks for manual focus, let me know in the comments below. I have a past video in the description that I'll link as well, but it's a little bit outdated now, and I think that I've learned so much since then. And now I'm able to get shots like these that you saw of those violet green swallows, which are incredibly fast moving subjects, by still being able to tack manual focus. Focusing is so key, because when an image is slightly out of focus, it affects so many things. Two things mostly. It affects your ability to be able to crop in. You really can't crop in, and you notice those slightly missed focuses so much more as you crop into your image. So that's one thing that it prohibits. But even so, as you blow up bigger and bigger, you really start to notice those details, and a slightly out of focus subject really messes with someone's eye. It's really, really nasty, kind of a little bit unclean and unprofessional. And so you really want to make sure to hit those focuses really well. Now, the fifth tip that I have to share about bird photography, and that's kind of controversial for a lot of people as they're starting to get into bird and wildlife photography, is that you don't have to take every shot you see. There's a huge temptation when you're first getting into bird and wildlife photography that every image you see, you need to be able to take that shot of that animal, of that subject. But in a lot of scenarios, you just aren't offered good results with a lot of the subjects that you're seeing. It took me a long time to learn that I didn't need to photograph every subject that I was seeing out in the field. And really, I need to focus on the opportunities that are good quality image opportunities given to me. At first, when I went out and did bird photography, I would just snap everything in sight. As if I would see a new species, I would snap it. I wouldn't really wait and see for the opportune moment, or try to find an opportune moment to be able to capture it. But now when I go out and do wildlife photography, I'm looking for those scenarios. I'm looking for good compositions, good lighting, stuff like that, revisiting species over and over again to get the same shots that I'm trying to get. And in the past, that wasn't a thing. So when people are getting into bird photography, or in those beginning stages, or maybe even in the middle stages, a lot of times there's such a temptation to feel like you need to capture everything you're seeing, but don't. Allow yourself to just sit back, relax, look for those good opportunities. And if you use your time wisely in those scenarios, you'll wind up walking away with way more quality images than if you were to just snap everything that you see. You guys heard me talk a little bit before about the wildlife photography mentorships I've been doing. They've been going great with a lot of the students that I have. They've been giving me great reviews and great results, and I've been so happy to see their progress. If you guys are interested in doing any of these photography mentorships, in which I work with you guys on a lot of these things, but so much more in so much more detail to help you progress where you're at to where you want to be, make sure to check out my website in the description below or the card above. And I'd love to work with you guys in improving your wildlife photography skills, your bird photography skills, and I'm so excited to get to meet you guys. I'll also be giving away a free 2 weeks of my wildlife photography mentorship for anyone who clicks that like button on this video and sends me a screenshot or a picture of it to my Instagram account, which is @JeremyKnipe, or my email, which is jeremy.knipe@gmail.com. Send me a screenshot or an image of your like button pressed, and you'll be entered for a chance to win 2 free weeks of my wildlife photography mentorship. Thank you guys so much for watching. Hope these tips helped you guys out today. Don't forget to subscribe below if you haven't already, and I can't wait to see you guys in the next video.